The cameras had stopped rolling. The runway lights had dimmed. But in the empty backstage area of the Victoria's Secret fashion show 20, Lily Donaldson stood alone, still wearing her angel wings, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured face. The makeup artist had left. The photographers had moved on to capture the after-party glamour. Yet here she was, one of the world's most successful supermodels, sobbing in silence among discarded sequins and forgotten stilettos. What the cameras didn't capture that night was the moment when Britain's golden girl of fashion whispered to herself the words that would define her destiny. "I can't do this anymore." This wasn't a breakdown, it was a conscious choice. Unlike her contemporaries Gemma Ward and Agnes Dane, whose disappearances from fashion were reactive responses to crisis and exhaustion, Lily Donaldson was about to pioneer something revolutionary: disappearance as survival strategy. Within months, the face that had graced over 30 international Vogue covers would begin executing the most sophisticated vanishing act in fashion history. The woman who had walked for every major fashion house from Chanel to Versace would start declining the very opportunities that had made her a household name. But this wasn't surrender. It was rebellion. In an industry where visibility equals value, where Instagram followers determine worth more than artistic merit, Lily was about to commit the ultimate act of defiance. She would choose to become invisible precisely when the world demanded hyper-visibility. She represented the last wave of mystery in fashion, a pre-Instagram supermodel who understood that in an age of constant documentation, strategic silence had become the rarest luxury of all. As social media transformed her younger colleagues into 24/7 content creators, as Kendall Jenner and Bella Hadid built empires on perpetual accessibility, Lily would prove that true power lay not in being seen, but in choosing when to disappear. She was witnessing the death of an entire paradigm, the end of the era when models could control their own mystique. The official story would speak of artistic pursuits and personal growth, but those closest to Lily knew there were deeper currents at play, a calculated rejection of what she had come to see as an objectification contract. She wasn't just stepping back from fame. She was conducting a feminist experiment in what happened when a woman refused to be consumed by the machine that made her valuable. In an age where young women were being taught that silence equals irrelevance, where platforms like Instagram had turned every moment into content, Lily Donaldson was asking a revolutionary question. What if the most powerful act a woman could perform was the refusal to perform at all? What if the fashion industry could no longer survive if its most beautiful women simply chose to walk away? To understand how Britain's most enigmatic supermodel became the invisible woman, and why her disappearance would challenge the very foundations of celebrity culture, we must first understand how a quiet teenager from Camden became the face that launched 1,000 campaigns, and why she would ultimately reject the system that elevated her to goddess status. The year was 1987, and London was pulsing with creative rebellion. Margaret Thatcher's Britain was transforming, and in the borough of Camden, epicenter of punk culture and artistic resistance, a family was about to welcome a daughter who would one day embody both the pinnacle of British elegance and its quiet revolution against commodification. Lily Monica Donaldson entered the world on January 27th, born to parents who existed entirely outside the fashion ecosystem. Her father worked in business, her mother in the arts, a combination that would prove prophetic. They instilled in her an early understanding that creativity and commerce were separate entities, that artistic expression didn't require public consumption to have value. Growing up in Camden's creative chaos, young Lily was surrounded by an authentic form of artistic rebellion. The neighborhood was a living contradiction, gritty yet glamorous, underground yet internationally famous. Camden Market drew visitors seeking that authentic London edge that couldn't be manufactured. Perhaps it was this environment that taught Lily the crucial difference between genuine artistic expression and performance for its own sake. Those who knew her as a child describe a girl who possessed an unusual quality. She was simultaneously magnetic and self-contained. While other children performed for attention, Lily seemed content to observe and create in solitude. She carried a sketchbook everywhere, filling it with drawings that her art teacher would later describe as haunting in their emotional depth, a prescient observation about someone whose future would involve being constantly observed while remaining fundamentally unknowable. But there was something else about young Lily that would prove prophetic. Even as a child, she demonstrated an ability to be fully present while maintaining emotional distance, a skill that would later allow her to navigate an industry designed to consume its stars. Family photos from this period show a girl naturally comfortable in front of cameras, yet she would later reveal feeling like she was watching myself from outside my own experience. This early dissociation wasn't pathological. It was protective instinct. Growing up where authenticity was both celebrated and commodified, where street art became gallery pieces overnight. Lily learned that the act of being observed could fundamentally change the thing being observed. She was developing, perhaps unconsciously, the psychological tools she would need to survive an industry built on the consumption of female identity. Her parents valued education and creativity over conventional success, encouraging Lily's artistic pursuits while maintaining that her worth wasn't tied to external validation. This foundation would prove crucial when the fashion world attempted to define her value purely through her ability to generate desire and sales. In Camden's ecosystem, she learned that the most valuable things often existed in spaces between public and private, seen and unseen, commercial and authentic. Could this early sense of being an observer rather than a participant have been preparing her for a life where she would be constantly watched, analyzed, and commodified? Or was it prescient training for someone who would eventually master the art of hiding in plain sight? The art that filled her childhood, painting, drawing, creating for pure joy rather than recognition, would become her anchor in a world where creativity was increasingly indistinguishable from marketing. More importantly, it would provide the alternative identity that would eventually allow her to walk away from fashion entirely. At 13, Lily's height began to distinguish her from peers, but so did her approach to attention. While her rapidly changing body might have made other teenagers self-conscious, Lily carried her transformation with unusual grace. She was developing into a striking young woman but remained fundamentally unchanged in her preference for observation over performance. This was the final era before social media transformed adolescence into public performance. Lily's teenage years unfolded in relative privacy, allowing her to develop a sense of self that wasn't constantly mediated by others' opinions. This privacy would later feel like a luxury she could never reclaim, and would ultimately choose to fight to preserve. The discovery that would change everything happened on an ordinary Saturday afternoon in 2003. 16-year-old Lily was shopping in Camden with her mother when Sarah Dukas, founder of Supermodel Management, approached them near vintage clothing stalls. Dukas had discovered Kate Moss decades earlier, and she immediately recognized something special in the tall blonde teenager browsing band t-shirts. "Excuse me," Dukas said, "has anyone ever told you that you should be a model?" Lily's first reaction wasn't excitement. It was skepticism. This response would prove characteristic. Even at 16, she possessed intuitive understanding that being chosen for appearance was both opportunity and trap. She wasn't seeking attention or dreaming of fashion stardom. She was simply a teenager who wanted to find the perfect vintage jacket. But her mother, perhaps seeing opportunity for her artistic daughter to explore different creative expression, encouraged Lily to hear what Dukas had to say. The decision would launch not just a career, but a decade-long experiment in maintaining authenticity within a system designed to manufacture desire. Within days, Lily found herself in Storm offices participating in her first photo shoot. The results were stunning. Even in test shots, she possessed that rare quality separating catalog models from cover girls. More importantly, she demonstrated ability to give cameras exactly what they needed while holding something essential back. Sarah Dukas later said, "Lily had something I hadn't seen since Kate. It wasn't just her beauty. It was her ability to be completely present and completely absent simultaneously. The camera loved her, but she remained fundamentally untouchable." This untouchability would become both Lily's greatest asset and eventual salvation. In an industry that consumed stars by making them completely available, completely knowable, Lily maintained a core of mystery that no amount of exposure could penetrate. The transition from Camden teenager to working model happened with startling speed, but Lily approached it with unusual strategic thinking. Unlike many young models who threw themselves completely into fashion's world, she maintained other interests, continued education, and most importantly, kept painting. Was this early detachment a survival strategy that would allow her to navigate fashion without being destroyed? Or was she already developing the philosophical framework that would eventually allow her to reject the system entirely? The contradiction was becoming apparent. Fashion wanted models who appeared authentic and spontaneous but demanded complete control over how that authenticity was packaged and sold. Lily was learning to navigate this paradox by giving the industry her image while protecting her essence, a skill that would prove revolutionary. By 2004, Lily's striking features had caught attention of major fashion houses, but so had her unusual ability to maintain mystery in an increasingly transparent world. Her breakthrough came with a Burberry campaign, perfect marriage of British brand and British beauty that felt both inevitable and carefully orchestrated. The Burberry campaign, shot by Mario Testino, established her as part of a lineage of British models who represented more than beauty. They embodied an ideal of sophisticated restraint becoming increasingly rare. This was the beginning of what would later be recognized as the last era of pre-Instagram modeling. The industry still operated on scarcity, limited exposure that made each image valuable. Models could control their narrative by controlling availability. Social media existed but hadn't yet become mandatory for career success. Lily thrived because she understood intuitively that mystery was power. While other rising models sought maximum exposure, she seemed to understand that selective visibility would make her more, not less, desirable to prestigious clients. The Burberry campaign opened doors across international fashion. Her face began appearing in Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Elle globally. What set Lily apart wasn't just chameleon-like adaptability, but skill at giving photographers exactly what they needed while never giving everything. Stephen Meisel described working with her as photographing liquid mercury. She could become anything while remaining essentially herself. This period coincided with fashion's growing fascination with authenticity as marketing tool. Brands realized consumers craved real moments, genuine emotions. But Lily understood that true authenticity couldn't be manufactured. It could only be protected. Her collaborations with iconic designers like John Galliano at Dior and Riccardo Tisci at Givenchy elevated her from working model to muse. But even in these intimate creative relationships, she maintained boundaries, protecting her core self from consumption. The transformation was remarkable. In 3 years, the Camden teenager discovered shopping for vintage clothes became one of fashion's most sought-after faces. Unlike many meteoric rises, Lily's ascent felt controlled, strategic, inevitable rather than chaotic. Yet those working closely with her noticed something prophetic. As external success increased, she became more internally focused. She continued painting throughout this period, creating works markedly different from her public image. Dark, abstract pieces exploring themes of fragmentation and identity. Was this artistic practice necessary outlet for someone living increasingly public life? Or was it evidence that Lily was conceptualizing an alternative identity, one existing independent of commercial value? The year 2007 marked Lily's golden period. When her face achieved ubiquity reserved for elite models, she was everywhere. Newsstands, luxury stores, runways from London to Shanghai. But this visibility came with prices becoming apparent to those who knew her. The Versace campaign, shot by Mert and Marcus, marked subtle but significant shift in positioning. Images were stunning but more overtly sexual than previous work, representing the industry's attempt to transform her from ethereal British rose into international sex symbol. The campaign was commercially successful, but highlighted tension between Lily's natural reserve and the industry's hunger for increasingly explicit commodification. This evolution wasn't comfortable. In rare, substantive interviews from this period, she told The Telegraph, "Sometimes I look at photos of myself and think, who is that person? It's strange to see your face selling dreams to people when you're not sure what your own dreams are anymore." The comment demonstrated Lily's growing awareness of disconnect between public image and private reality. She was articulating what many models felt but couldn't express, the surreal experience of watching your image become commodity independent of actual identity. During this peak period, pressures of maintaining top position were immense. Every appearance was scrutinized, every photo analyzed for signs of aging or imperfection. Fashion's youth obsession meant even at success's height, she was aware her commercial value was tied to factors beyond her control. But Lily was witnessing the industry's real-time transformation. Social media platforms were changing how models related to audiences. The controlled scarcity that made her generation valuable was being replaced by expectations of constant availability. Perpetual content creation, unprecedented access to private moments. This shift represented everything Lily instinctively resisted. Where other models embraced MySpace and early Facebook to extend reach, Lily maintained minimal online presence. She understood intuitively that social media would fundamentally alter model-audience relationships in ways ultimately diminishing Mystery's power. The luxury surrounding her daily life created strange dichotomy. She was photographed wearing million-dollar jewelry, traveling by private jet, staying in exclusive hotels. Yet those who knew her described her as most comfortable in her small London flat, painting in spare time, living monastically between professional obligations. This contrast wasn't accidental. It was strategic. While fashion demanded increasing access to models' personal lives, Lily was quietly constructing boundaries, allowing participation in commercial aspects, while protecting authentic self from commodification. Behind all that glamour, was there unbearable loneliness nobody saw? Fashion had perfected a system surrounding stars with people while leaving them fundamentally isolated. Lily had hundreds of professional relationships but few genuine connections, thousands of admirers but limited opportunities for authentic intimacy. Rather than seeking to fill isolation through increased social engagement, Lily seemed to embrace it as protection. She was learning that in an industry designed to consume authenticity, solitude might be the only space where genuine selfhood could survive. The year 2009 brought what would be recognized as catalyst for Lily's transformation from compliant participant to conscious objector. While shooting a campaign in Italy, she was involved in a car accident that, while minor physically, served as profound psychological awakening. The accident crystallized anxieties building throughout her career about control, agency, and relationships between public and private selves. Rather than processing this experience, Lily insisted on continuing scheduled work, arriving at next day's shoot with injuries concealed by makeup, but psychological impact was profound. The accident triggered deep examination of her relationship with risk, control, mortality. More importantly, it forced her to confront how completely her life had become structured around others' needs rather than authentic desires. Fashion's response to vulnerability was predictably exploitative. Rather than expressing concern, certain photographers began casting her in increasingly dark campaigns, drawn to her perceived new edge. They were unknowingly documenting a young woman's growing awareness of the system's fundamental indifference to her humanity. The breaking point came during a demanding shoot for a major luxury brand. Lily suffered what appeared to be a panic attack, locking herself in a bathroom for over an hour. When she emerged, pale and shaking, she insisted on completing the shoot. Images from that day were later described as some of the most haunting fashion photographs ever taken. What fashion interpreted as artistic breakthrough was actually documentation of psychological crisis. The vulnerability that made these images compelling was evidence of a system valuing aesthetic impact over human welfare. Word spread quickly, but rather than generating concern, it seemed to increase Lily's commercial value. Her emotional fragility was being repackaged as artistic authenticity. Her struggle transformed into selling point for luxury goods. This reaction served as crucial awakening. Lily began understanding that fashion's relationship to talent was fundamentally extractive. The system wasn't interested in supporting her as a person. It was interested in mining her experiences, including trauma, for commercial purposes. Did this tragic event mark her downfall? Or was it the beginning of liberation from a system that had never valued her humanity? For Lily, the incident became a turning point, clarifying the true nature of her relationship with fashion and beginning her journey toward conscious resistance. Most importantly, she began conceptualizing an alternative relationship to fame, one based on selective engagement rather than total availability. The accident taught her that the industry would consume whatever she was willing to give, including suffering. The only protection was withholding what was most essential. Following 2009's trauma, Lily underwent profound internal transformation, largely invisible to industry observers, but representing fundamental shift in how she understood relationships to fame, image, and authenticity. The young woman who had approached modeling as creative challenge began developing what could only be described as a philosophy of strategic resistance. Changes manifested first in subtle alterations to professional behavior. Her legendary punctuality became ritualistic. She would arrive hours early for shoots and wait in her car, using time for meditation rather than socializing. Her on-set conversation became purely functional, focused only on technical requirements. Psychologically, Lily was developing sophisticated compartmentalization, not unhealthy dissociation, but conscious self-preservation, allowing survival in hostile environments. She later described this period as learning to loan out my image while keeping my soul in escrow. This era produced some of her most acclaimed work, but for troubling reasons. The emotional distance she maintained as psychological protection created haunting quality photographers found irresistible. Her 2010 Vogue covers are still considered among the most beautiful fashion photographs ever taken, but carry undercurrents of melancholy, speaking to her growing alienation. Parallel to modeling, Lily's artistic practice evolved into something serious and substantial. She rented studio space in converted East London warehouse, creating large-scale paintings bearing no resemblance to her public image. These works were dark, abstract explorations of identity, visibility, and costs of constant observation. Significantly, she began exhibiting these pieces under pseudonym in group shows at respected London galleries. Art critics, unaware of her identity, praised work for exploration of isolation in the modern world and haunting examination of disconnect between public and private selves. That her authentic artistic voice was being recognized independent of celebrity validated her growing conviction that real value existed outside fashion. Her personal relationships shifted dramatically. She gravitated toward artists, writers, intellectuals existing outside fashion, people valuing ideas and creativity over status and image. These relationships provided intellectual stimulation and emotional connection fashion had never offered. More importantly, these friendships allowed her to experience being valued for thoughts, opinions, creative insights rather than appearance or commercial value. For someone who had spent entire adult life being primarily valued as visual object, these relationships were profoundly healing. Her approach to fame became increasingly strategic. While continuing as one of the most sought-after models globally, she began viewing public attention as resource to be carefully managed rather than end in itself. She stopped reading articles about herself, avoided fashion parties unless contractually required, began using private entrances when visiting her agency. The irony wasn't lost on those close to her. As Lily became more reluctant to engage with fashion's social aspects, her commercial value only increased. Her elusiveness was becoming part of her brand, making her even more desirable to photographers and creative directors who understood that resistance to total availability made each booking more precious. Can anyone ever truly escape from shadows of their darkest moments? For Lily, the attempt wasn't to escape trauma but transform it into wisdom about the true nature of the system she was navigating. She was learning to see fashion not as glamorous creative enterprise but as complex machine designed to extract and commodify human authenticity. This understanding allowed her to develop what she would later describe as professional detachment with personal integrity. She could fulfill contractual obligations flawlessly while maintaining psychological boundaries, protecting essential self from exploitation. Those working with her during this period often described sensing profound sadness in her presence. Though she maintained perfect professionalism, what they perceived wasn't depression but grief, gradual mourning of illusions about an industry she had once hoped would provide creative fulfillment and authentic connection. She was becoming extraordinarily skilled at performing being a model while increasingly disconnected from personal investment in that performance. It was survival strategy that would ultimately evolve into something much more radical. Complete redefinition of what it meant to be successful in an industry built on consumption of female identity. By 2012, Lily had achieved virtually everything possible within traditional modeling framework. She was a Victoria's Secret angel, had appeared on over 30 international Vogue covers, was the face of multiple luxury brands simultaneously. The London Olympics provided perfect showcase for her status as Britain's fashion ambassador when she appeared alongside Kate Moss and Naomi Campbell in the closing ceremony. But this pinnacle of conventional success masked growing internal revolution. Friends describe her as increasingly philosophical about her career, questioning not whether she was successful by industry standards, but whether those standards represented anything meaningful or sustainable. The Olympics appearance was particularly significant because it highlighted both her established position within fashion royalty and growing discomfort with fame's performative aspects. Wearing stunning golden Burberry gown, she embodied British elegance on global stage, but those close to her knew she was already planning her exit strategy. This was the critical moment when Lily began to understand herself not just as a model, but as case study in how women could escape systems designed to consume them. She was transitioning from passive participant to conscious curator of her own image and career narrative. Her personal life underwent equally dramatic changes. She ended a high-profile relationship with a British musician, citing impossibility of maintaining authenticity under constant media surveillance. "How can you have real relationship when you're not sure who you really are anymore?" she confided, articulating problems that would become endemic among her generation of celebrities. Art that had served as emotional outlet began assuming greater importance in daily life and future planning. She started dedicating entire weeks to painting, turning down lucrative bookings to spend time in her studio. Her work evolved from dark abstractions of her crisis period into something more hopeful but still deeply introspective. Her rare interviews took on philosophical quality, surprising fashion journalists accustomed to standard celebrity soundbites. "Fashion is fantasy," she told Vogue in what would become one of her most quoted statements. "But you can't live in fantasy forever." The comment was more than casual observation. It was manifesto. Lily was articulating her growing understanding that fashion's relationship to reality was fundamentally problematic. and that participating in that fantasy required self-alienation she was no longer willing to accept. The industry initially interpreted her increasing selectivity as natural career evolution. What insiders failed to recognize was that Lily wasn't becoming more selective about opportunities within the system. She was beginning to question the system itself. Her relationship with emerging social media platforms became a particularly telling indicator of evolving philosophy. While other models embraced Instagram and Twitter to extend brands and connect with fans, Lily maintained minimal online presence. Her rare posts featured artwork or landscapes rather than fashion content or personal moments. This resistance to social media wasn't simply personal preference. It represented sophisticated understanding of how these platforms would fundamentally alter relationships between celebrities and audiences. Lily seemed to intuitively grasp that social media would eliminate scarcity and mystery that had made her generation valuable, replacing it with expectations of constant availability and perpetual performance. The most significant decision came in 2013, when she declined to renew her contract as Victoria's Secret Angel. The choice shocked fashion, as the angel role was considered one of the most prestigious and lucrative positions in modeling. Her official statement cited desire to explore other creative opportunities, but friends knew the real reason: growing discomfort with what she had come to see as institutionalized objectification. The Victoria's Secret decision represented more than career choice. It was feminist statement about the right to withdraw consent from systems of commodification. Lily was refusing to participate in enterprise that reduced women to interchangeable fantasy objects, regardless of financial and professional benefits. This choice positioned her as inadvertent pioneer in what would later become broader conversation about consent, agency, and women's right to control their own image and narrative. She was demonstrating that true power might lie not in achieving success within existing systems, but in courage to reject those systems entirely. Were these final decisions acts of surrender, or courageous acts of self-preservation? Those who knew her best understood she was making conscious choices to protect whatever remained of her authentic self, even if it meant stepping away from the career that had defined her adult life. The year 2015 marked the beginning of what fashion would eventually recognize as Lily Donaldson's masterpiece, the art of strategic disappearance. This wasn't chaotic retreat of someone overwhelmed by fame. It was calculated move of someone who had learned to see invisibility as ultimate form of resistance to culture obsessed with consumption of female identity. Her reduced presence was initially attributed to natural career evolution, but those paying attention could see something more radical at work. Lily was conducting experiment in whether it was possible to maintain professional relevance while refusing to participate in personal commodification that social media had made standard. This period coincided with fashion's full embrace of social media as marketing tool. Models were increasingly expected to be content creators, lifestyle brands, accessible personalities in addition to visual artists. The successful model of 20 needed to share workout routines, relationship details, political opinions, daily activities, to maintain relevance. Lily's refusal to participate in this new paradigm was both professionally risky and philosophically consistent. She understood that demand for constant content would inevitably consume whatever privacy and authenticity remained to celebrities. By withdrawing from this expectation, she was preserving something becoming extinct: possibility of genuine mystery. Her contemporary Cara Delevingne represented opposite approach, embracing social media, sharing personal struggles publicly, building brand around accessibility and relatability. The contrast between their strategies highlighted two completely different philosophies about fame, privacy, and relationships between public and private identity. But Lily represented something even more significant. She was the last representative of pre-Instagram modeling, when scarcity created value, when mystery was power, when models could still control their own narrative. As younger models like Kendall Jenner and Bella Hadid built empires on constant availability, Lily was proving that strategic invisibility could be even more powerful. Away from cameras and runways, Lily was systematically constructing alternative life centered around artistic creation and intellectual engagement. She spent increasing time in her East London studio, developing body of work gaining recognition in art world independent of modeling fame. Her paintings from this period explored themes of visibility, identity, psychological cost of constant observation. Work was sophisticated enough to merit attention from serious critics, but she continued exhibiting under pseudonym to ensure engagement with her art remained separate from fascination with celebrity. The financial independence her successful modeling career provided gave her luxury of making choices based on personal fulfillment rather than economic necessity. She purchased a small cottage in countryside outside London, where she could paint in natural light and experience privacy that had become impossible in urban settings. This rural retreat became essential to mental health and creative development. For someone who had spent over a decade being constantly photographed and observed, the cottage represented space where she could exist without being documented, where her value wasn't tied to appearance or productivity. Her rare professional bookings took on almost ceremonial quality. She accepted perhaps one major campaign per year, always with photographers she trusted to respect her evolved boundaries. These shoots often produced some of the most powerful images of her career, precisely because they captured someone who had learned to value her own consent and agency above commercial success. Fashion's response to her increasing unavailability was telling. Rather than losing interest, many brands became even more eager to work with her, understanding that her scarcity made each appearance more valuable. This validated her intuitive understanding that mystery and selectivity were forms of power that couldn't be replicated through social media presence. Her influence on younger models was becoming apparent, though it operated through example rather than explicit mentorship. Several rising stars began citing her approach as evidence that successful fashion career was possible without sacrificing personal authenticity or mental health. More importantly, she was demonstrating alternatives to social media-driven celebrity model becoming standard. Her path suggested that true influence might come not from constant visibility, but from courage to be selectively invisible, not from total availability, but from strategic withdrawal. As the 2010s progressed, Lily's experiment in strategic disappearance was revealing something profound about nature of fame, value, and female agency in contemporary media landscape. She was proving it was possible to opt out of commodification systems while maintaining both professional respect and personal integrity. Today, Lily Donaldson occupies a unique position in contemporary culture. She has achieved rare feat of transitioning from public figure to private person, while maintaining enough visibility to serve as example for others seeking similar transformation. Now in her late 30s, she represents something almost extinct in celebrity culture, someone who successfully refused to be completely consumed by the machine that made her famous. Her current life operates according to principles directly contradicting contemporary assumptions about success, relevance, and value. Instead of maximizing visibility, she has minimized it. Instead of leveraging fame for constant financial gain, she has chosen selective engagement. Instead of building personal brand, she has systematically dismantled commercial aspects of her identity. The cottage in countryside has become her primary residence, with London's studio serving as space for artistic work continuing to gain recognition in art world. Her paintings, still exhibited under pseudonym, have been featured in several significant group shows. Critics praise work's profound examination of identity in age of image reproduction. Without knowing, they're analyzing artistic expression of someone who lived that examination firsthand. Her approach to professional opportunities has become legendary within fashion for its clarity and consistency. She accepts approximately one major booking per year, always with specific conditions about usage, context, creative control. Her requirements have become template for models seeking to maintain agency within commercial relationships. These rare professional appearances generate significant attention precisely because of their scarcity. When she walked in Burberry show in 2019, her first runway appearance in over 3 years, it was treated as major fashion news. But images from that show revealed someone who appeared genuinely comfortable with her choices, radiating calm confidence absent during peak fame years. Her relationship with technology and social media has remained consistent with broader philosophy of selective engagement. Her Instagram account maintaining over 1 million followers despite minimal activity, features primarily artwork and images from travels to remote natural locations. The contrast with contemporary influencer culture is stark and intentional. Perhaps most significantly, she has become quiet but substantial supporter of organizations focused on mental health, particularly those serving young women in high-pressure industries. Her contributions are made anonymously, but involvement in fundraising efforts has helped raise both awareness and resources for these causes. This philanthropic work reflects her understanding that personal choices have broader implications. By demonstrating it's possible to opt out of exploitation systems while maintaining economic security and personal fulfillment, she's providing template for others seeking similar autonomy. Her influence on contemporary discussions about celebrity, privacy, and female agency has been largely indirect but profoundly significant. Academic studies of social media and celebrity culture increasingly reference her approach as example of successful resistance to commodification pressures. More practically, several high-profile models and actresses have adopted elements of her strategy, maintaining minimal social media presence and being highly selective about professional opportunities. Her example has helped normalize the idea that constant availability isn't necessarily equivalent to success or relevance. The question that continues to fascinate cultural observers is whether Lily's approach represents viable model for contemporary celebrity or simply unique path of exceptionally introspective individual. In industry increasingly dominated by social media presence and personal branding, her rejection of these requirements seems almost radical. Yet her continued relevance and influence suggest there may be more hunger for authenticity and mystery than contemporary media landscape typically acknowledges. Her example demonstrates that in culture obsessed with total visibility, strategic invisibility can be a form of power. As she approaches 40, Lily Donaldson has achieved something few celebrities ever manage. She has successfully redefined success on her own terms while maintaining respect of industry she partially rejected. Her legacy in fashion is secure, but her current life suggests she has found something more valuable than fame: ability to live according to her own values and creative interests. The mystery of Lily Donaldson isn't about what happened to her. It's about how she managed to preserve her essential self while participating in industry designed to consume authenticity. Her story represents both cautionary tale about costs of fame and inspiring example of possibility of conscious resistance to commodification. In choosing strategic invisibility over constant visibility, selective engagement over total availability, and personal integrity over commercial optimization, Lily has solved problem that countless contemporary celebrities struggle with: how to be successful without losing yourself. What hidden secrets might still remain untold behind her public image? Perhaps the most intriguing secret is that there may be no secrets at all. Just a woman who figured out how to protect her authentic self in industry designed to consume it, and who discovered that art of strategic disappearance might be the most sophisticated form of celebrity management ever devised. Her path suggests that most radical act a woman can perform in culture obsessed with female visibility might be simple but profound choice to remain partially hidden, to value her own consent and agency above public approval, and to understand that true power sometimes lies in courage to say no. The girl from Camden who was discovered while shopping for vintage clothes has indeed found what she was looking for. not in spotlight, but in shadows, not in performance, but in presence, not in being everything to everyone, but in being enough for herself. In age that demands constant performance from women, she chose silence. In culture that equates visibility with value, she chose depth. In industry built on fantasy, she chose to live in truth. Her story serves as both roadmap and revolution. Proof that it's possible to achieve traditional success while maintaining personal authenticity. And that most powerful form of resistance might simply be refusal to be completely known, completely available, or completely consumed by systems that promise to make us valuable. But perhaps Lily's greatest achievement isn't what she became. It's what she refused to become. In an era where young women are taught that their value lies in their visibility, where the fashion industry has shifted from creating mystique to demanding transparency, where social media has transformed every private moment into potential content, Lily Donaldson stands as living proof that a woman can choose to be unknowable. She didn't just fade from the spotlight. She redefined what it means to shine. And in doing so, she may have saved not just herself, but offered a blueprint for any woman who refuses to be consumed by the systems that claim to celebrate her.